I'm Natalie, 34, and last month's family dinner changed everything forever. For years, I've endured my sister Heather's judgment of my parenting. But I never imagined she'd lay hands on my daughter Lily. When Lily proudly showed her award-winning artwork and accidentally knocked over a wine glass, Heather slapped her across the face. The silence that followed was deafening, but what happened next shocked our entire family to its core. Before I tell you what happened that night, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button because this story shows how standing up for your child can change everything. Life as a single mom hasn't been easy. Since my divorce from Lily's father 3 years ago, I've been working as a freelance graphic designer from our modest 2-bedroom apartment. The flexible hours allow me to be there for Lily when she needs me, which is important given her struggle with anxiety. My ex-husband moved across the country for a job opportunity, and while he sends child support, his visits have become increasingly rare. Lily misses him, but she's learned to adapt, channeling her emotions into her artwork. Lily just turned 10 last month. She has my wavy brown hair, but her father's intense blue eyes that seem to take in everything around her. Since she was old enough to hold a crayon, she's been creating art that surprises everyone with its depth and emotion. Her art teacher says she has a gift for expressing complex feelings through color and form, something rare in a child her age. But along with her creative spirit comes a sensitivity that makes her vulnerable. She struggles with anxiety in social situations, especially around my family, who have never really understood her quiet, thoughtful nature. Growing up in the Parker household was a study in contrasts. My sister Heather, 2 years older, was the golden child, academically gifted, socially adept, and always saying and doing the right things to please our parents. I was the dreamer. The one with my head in the clouds, as my father Thomas would say, never quite measuring up to the standards set by my perfect sister. Our mother Barbara always insisted she loved us equally, but her actions told a different story. Heather's achievements were celebrated with parties and gifts, while mine were acknowledged with polite nods and immediate questions about what could have been improved. Heather married James, a successful investment banker, right after college. They live in a sprawling house in the most exclusive neighborhood in town, with their 2 children, Ashley, 12, and Noah, 8. Ashley is the spitting image of her mother, not just in looks with her perfectly styled blonde hair, but in her calculating attitude and the subtle cruelty she sometimes displays toward Lily. Noah is quieter, often lost in the shadow of his sister and mother's dominant personalities. At every family gathering, Heather finds ways to highlight the differences in our lives. "Oh, Natalie, that's a cute top. Is that from the outlet mall, or Lily seems so small for her age? Are you sure she's eating enough protein?" The comments are always delivered with a smile, making it impossible to call her out without seeming overly sensitive. Our monthly family dinners at our parents' colonial-style home have become an exercise in endurance. The tradition started after Heather and I both had children, supposedly to keep the family close, but they've mostly served as a showcase for Heather's perfect life and parenting skills. Barbara spends the day cooking elaborate meals, Thomas opens expensive wine, and we all pretend we're a happy, functional family for approximately 3 hours. Last month, something incredible happened that gave me hope this dinner might be different. Lily entered her painting in the regional youth art competition, something she'd been hesitant to do because of her anxiety about having her work judged. Not only did she overcome her fear, but she won first place against children much older than her. The judges commented on the emotional maturity displayed in her work. A watercolor piece showing a small girl looking out a window at a stormy sky, with a tiny patch of blue visible in the distance. Lily titled it, "Finding Hope." When she received the blue ribbon, I'd never seen her smile so brightly. She clutched that ribbon all the way home, her usual anxiety momentarily forgotten in the glow of achievement. "Do you think Aunt Heather and Grandma and Grandpa will be proud of me?" she asked, her voice small but hopeful. My heart ached at the question, at 10 years old. She was still seeking approval from people who had never really tried to understand her. "Of course they will, sweetheart," I assured her, though uncertainty gnawed at me. Everyone will be so impressed. We spent the day before the dinner carefully framing her artwork, making sure it was protected but easily removable to show the family. Lily even practiced a small speech about her inspiration for the painting. Watching her rehearse in front of the bathroom mirror, I felt a surge of pride so intense it brought tears to my eyes. This was her moment, and I was determined that my family would acknowledge it properly. The morning of the dinner, Lily was unusually meticulous about her appearance, selecting her favorite blue dress that matched her eyes and asking me to braid her hair, like the pictures of when you were little, Mom. As I wove her soft brown strands into a French braid, I noticed her hands fidgeting in her lap. "Are you nervous about tonight?" I asked gently. She nodded. "What if they don't like my painting? What if I say something stupid when I'm explaining it?" I turned her to face me, my hands on her small shoulders. "Your painting won first place because it's beautiful and meaningful. Nothing anyone says can change that. And you could never say anything stupid about your own art. It comes from your heart." She seemed reassured. But as we packed up the painting and a homemade apple pie for dessert, Barbara had assigned me dessert duty as usual. I couldn't shake my own anxiety. Something about tonight felt different, like we were standing on the edge of a significant change. I just couldn't tell if it would be for better or worse. We arrived at my parents' house at exactly 5:30 p.m., the mandatory arrival time my mother had established years ago. The familiar colonial with its pristine white exterior and perfectly manicured lawn loomed before us, somehow always making me feel like I was 16 again, about to be scolded for breaking curfew. "Remember to wipe your feet properly," I reminded Lily as we approached the front door, an automatic response after years of hearing my mother complain about tracked in dirt. Lily nodded, carefully balancing her framed artwork against her hip while I carried the apple pie. Before we could ring the bell, the door swung open. My father Thomas stood there. His tall frame slightly stooped with age, but his expression as appraising as ever. "You're cutting it close," he said by way of greeting, checking his watch even though we were exactly on time. "Your mother's been cooking all day." He bent slightly to acknowledge Lily. "Hello, young lady. Stand up straight now, let me see how much you've grown." Lily immediately straightened her posture, a practiced response to her grandfather's frequent posture checks. "Hello, Grandpa," she said quietly. He nodded, then noticed the frame she was carrying. "What's that you've got there?" Before Lily could answer, my mother's voice called from the kitchen. "Thomas? Is that Natalie? Bring them in, the appetizers are getting cold." We stepped into the foyer. With its gleaming hardwood floors and family portraits arranged in perfect symmetry on the walls, I noticed that the most prominent photo had recently been changed to one of Heather's family at some tropical resort, all of them tanned and smiling in coordinated white outfits. My mother Barbara emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an immaculate apron. At 62, she still maintained the blonde highlights she'd had since I was a child, though they now fought a more aggressive battle against the gray. "Natalie, good, you're here. Put the pie in the refrigerator, please." "Lily, don't slouch, darling." Lily shifted her weight, trying to stand even straighter while still holding her artwork. "Hi, Grandma. I brought something to show everyone." "That's nice, dear," my mother interrupted, clearly not listening. "Ashley and Noah are in the den. Ashley just got back from her piano recital. She played Chopin. Can you believe it? Such talent. You should go say hello." I felt Lily's disappointment as her grandmother brushed past her revelation. "Mom, actually, Lily has some exciting news too." "Oh, we'll have time for everyone's news at dinner." She waved dismissively. "Heather and James aren't here yet. They're running late because Ashley's recital went long. Apparently. She got a standing ovation and the instructor wanted to speak with them about advanced lessons. Of course they were late. The rules never seemed to apply to Heather. If I had arrived even 5 minutes after 5:30, I'd never hear the end of it. I helped Lily store her artwork safely behind the couch in the living room, promising her we'd find the right moment to share it. The sound of children's voices drew us to the den, where Ashley was holding court, describing her recital to my father in dramatic detail while Noah played some game on a tablet, looking bored. And then, Grandpa, the instructor said I have extraordinary dynamic control, which means I can make the music soft or loud in just the right places, Ashley was saying, her voice carrying that practiced quality of a child who knows she's being admired. That's wonderful. Ashley, my father beamed. You must have gotten your musical talent from your grandmother. She played piano beautifully when we were young. Ashley noticed us and paused, her smile shifting into something less genuine. Oh, hi, Aunt Natalie. Hi, Lily. Her eyes scanned Lily's blue dress, which suddenly seemed plain next to Ashley's clearly expensive outfit. That's a cute dress. Is it new? Thank you, Lily said softly. I've had it a while. Oh, Ashley replied with exaggerated understanding. My mom says it's smart to reuse clothes in this economy. I felt Lily stiffen beside me and placed a protective hand on her shoulder. Ashley, I heard your recital went well. Congratulations. Ashley nodded, accepting the praise as her due. Mom says I might be ready for a competition next year. Noah finally looked up from his tablet. Hi, Lily, he said simply, seemingly uninterested in the comparative dynamics at play. The front door opened, and Heather's voice filled the foyer. Mom? Dad? Sorry we're late. The traffic was absolutely awful coming from the recital. My mother rushed to greet them, exclamations of delight erupting as though the queen had arrived. I glanced at Lily and gave her a reassuring smile. Let's go say hello. Heather looked flawless, as always in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves. James stood beside her, handsome in that generic way of successful businessmen, carrying what appeared to be an expensive bottle of wine and a gift bag. Natalie, there you are, Heather said when she spotted me. Air kissing near my cheek. That color is so brave on you. She turned to Lily. Lily, darling, you're getting so tall. Still so skinny, though. Is she eating enough protein, Natalie? There it was, the first jab of the evening, barely 5 minutes into their arrival. Lily has a healthy appetite and a perfectly normal body type for her age, I replied evenly. An answer I'd given many times before. Heather made a sympathetic face. I'm just concerned. Ashley's pediatrician says proper nutrition during these formative years is crucial for brain development. She handed the gift bag to our mother. Mom, we brought you that olive oil from the specialty import shop you love, and Dad, James selected a Bordeaux he thought you'd appreciate. My father examined the wine with approval. Excellent vintage, James. We'll open this with dinner. The pie I'd spent hours baking that morning sat forgotten in the refrigerator. Dinner was announced shortly after, and we all took our usual places at the large dining table, my parents at either end, Heather and James on one side with their children, Lily and I on the other. The seating arrangement always made me feel like we were facing off against each other, which wasn't far from the truth. My mother had outdone herself as usual: roast beef with Yorkshire pudding, roasted vegetables, and some kind of quinoa salad that Heather had apparently suggested for those watching their carbs. The good china and crystal were out, making me nervous for Lily, who was still developing her fine motor skills. James, would you like to say grace? My father asked, a tradition that always went to the most important man at the table. As James delivered a practiced prayer, I watched Lily fidgeting slightly with her napkin, clearly anxious about finding the right moment to share her news. I gave her hand a gentle squeeze under the table. The initial conversation revolved, predictably, around Heather's family. Ashley's piano recital was dissected in minute detail, followed by Noah's performance at his private school's science fair. He didn't win, but the teacher said his project showed remarkable insight for his age, and finally James's recent promotion. We're thinking of renovating the kitchen to celebrate, Heather was saying. The current layout just doesn't flow properly for entertaining. That sounds lovely, dear, my mother nodded. You do host such wonderful dinner parties. I saw my opportunity and cleared my throat. Speaking of achievements, Lily has some exciting news to share. All eyes reluctantly turned to us. Lily started, her voice barely audible. Speak up, Lily, my father instructed. And remember your posture. Lily sat up straighter. I entered the regional youth art competition last weekend, she said, her voice gaining strength. And I won first place. There was a moment of silence before my mother said, "Well, that's nice, dear." Was this a school thing? No. It was the regional competition, I emphasized. Children from all over the state participated, many of them much older than Lily. The judges were professional artists. Art competitions, Heather said with a slight smile. How creative. Though I've always wondered about the subjectivity of judging art. It's not like piano or academics, where there are clear standards of excellence. I felt a flash of anger. The judges specifically mentioned the emotional maturity displayed in Lily's work. They were quite impressed. "What was your painting of, Lily?" James asked, showing the first genuine interest of the evening. Lily's face brightened slightly. "It's called Finding Hope. It's a watercolor of a girl looking at a storm. But there's a small patch of blue sky breaking through." "That sounds depressing," Ashley commented. "Why not paint something happy?" "It is happy," Lily defended quietly. "It's about finding hope even when things seem dark." "Well, I think that sounds very deep," my father said, though his tone suggested he was humoring her. "Lily has always been sensitive," my mother added with a small sigh. "I do hope you're not encouraging too much of this artistic temperament, Natalie. It's important she focuses on practical subjects too. What are her math grades like?" And just like that, Lily's achievement was dismissed, and the conversation was steered toward academics, with Heather happily reporting Ashley's perfect grades and advanced placement. As the main course was cleared and dessert prepared, I could see Lily's shoulders slumping slightly. Her initial excitement completely deflated. I leaned close to her ear. "Your painting is amazing, and I'm so proud of you. Do you still want to show it to everyone?" She nodded determinedly. "Yes. I brought it specially. We'll do it during dessert," I promised. As my mother served coffee to the adults and brought out the apple pie I'd made alongside a store-bought cheesecake that Heather picked up from that wonderful bakery downtown, I took a deep breath and stood up. "Before we start dessert, Lily would like to show everyone her award-winning painting," I announced, using a tone that brooked no argument. "Lily, why don't you get it from the living room?" Lily scurried off while Heather sighed audibly. "We're really dragging this out, aren't we? It's just a children's art contest. It's important to Lily," I replied firmly. "And it should be important to all of us." My mother looked uncomfortable. "Of course it's important, but perhaps we could look at it after dessert? The coffee is getting cold." "It will only take a minute," I insisted, just as Lily returned carrying her framed watercolor. She stood nervously at the edge of the table, holding up her painting for everyone to see. It truly was remarkable. A window view of storm clouds gathering over a landscape, rendered in varying shades of gray and deep blue. In the far corner, a small break in the clouds revealed a patch of clear blue sky, and the silhouette of a small girl could be seen watching from the window, her hand pressed against the glass. The perspective and emotion conveyed were striking, especially for a 10-year-old artist. "This is Finding Hope," Lily explained, her voice gaining confidence as she talked about her art. "I wanted to show how sometimes when everything seems dark, there's still something good to look for." The judges said they liked how I used different brush techniques for the storm versus the clear sky. There was a moment of silence as everyone looked at the painting. James was the first to respond. "That's genuinely impressive, Lily. You have a real talent." "It's nice," my mother said, though her tone suggested she didn't quite get it. "Very moody. Is this why you've been so quiet lately? Are you feeling sad about something?" "It's not about being sad, Mom," I interjected. "It's about finding hope in difficult situations. It's actually a very positive message." "Well, I think art is a lovely hobby," Heather said with a dismissive smile. "Though I do hope you're encouraging more practical pursuits too, Natalie. Not many people make a living as an artist." "She's 10, I said flatly. "She doesn't need to decide on a career path just yet." Ashley started piano at 7 specifically because it builds the neural pathways that support mathematical thinking, Heather continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Studies show that early specialized training is crucial for future success." My father cleared his throat. "The painting shows talent, certainly. But Heather has a point about practical skills. When I was building my accounting practice, I never hired based on creativity. Art teaches problem-solving, patience, emotional intelligence, and dozens of other practical skills, I countered, feeling my face grow warm. Besides, Lily won against children much older than her. That deserves acknowledgement, not redirection to more practical pursuits. Lily stood uncomfortably by the table, her painting still in her hands, her moment of pride rapidly deteriorating. "Can I look at it closer?" Noah asked unexpectedly, showing more interest than his sister or mother. "Sure," Lily said, carefully handing him the frame. Noah examined it with genuine curiosity. "I like how you made the storm look like it's moving. How did you do that?" As Lily began to explain her technique, Noah reached for his glass of juice to take a sip, momentarily forgetting he was holding the painting. His elbow knocked against his glass, sending orange juice splashing across the white tablecloth. "Noah," Heather exclaimed. "Be careful." "I'm sorry," Noah said, quickly setting down the painting to grab his napkin. "This is exactly why we don't bring art projects to the dinner table." My mother sighed, rushing to blot the spreading stain. "It's not Lily's fault," I said quickly, seeing my daughter's face fall. "Of course it is," Heather snapped. If she hadn't been distracting everyone with her painting, Noah would have been paying attention to his drink. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's not your fault." "Lily," I reassured her, shooting a warning glance at my sister. "Don't contradict me, Natalie," Heather said sharply. "This is why Lily lacks discipline. You never set proper boundaries." "And you're an expert on boundaries?" I shot back. "Your constant criticism of my parenting is the definition of boundary crossing." "Girls," my father warned, using the same tone he had when we were children, "let's not turn a spilled drink into a federal case." "I was just trying to show my painting," Lily said softly, tears now streaming down her face. "I worked really hard on it. And it's a lovely painting," my mother said in her placating voice. "But perhaps next time we can admire it somewhere away from food and drinks." "There won't be a next time if you never give her the chance to share her achievements," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "You've spent the entire evening talking about Ashley and Noah, but the moment Lily has something to celebrate, it's an inconvenience." Heather's face reddened. "That's not fair." We listened to her little explanation. "Little explanation?" I interrupted. "She won a regional competition, Heather. Her little explanation was about an achievement that should be celebrated, not tolerated." "You always do this," Heather said, her voice rising. "Turn everything into some sort of competition between our children. It's not healthy." "That's rich coming from you." I laughed incredulously. "You've been competing with me since we were children, and now you're doing the same thing with Lily." The tension at the table was palpable. Ashley was watching with barely concealed interest, clearly enjoying the drama. Noah looked uncomfortable, still holding his napkin over the juice spill. My parents exchanged worried glances. And used to such direct confrontation, disrupting their carefully orchestrated family dinners. Lily stood frozen beside the table, still holding her painting, tears silently tracking down her cheeks. "I just wanted everyone to see my art," she whispered. "And we did see it, dear," my mother said with forced brightness. "Now, who would like some pie?" "I worked for weeks on this painting," Lily continued, finding her voice despite her tears. "The judges said it showed real emotion and technique. Why doesn't anyone care?" "Lily, that's enough," Heather said sharply. "You're being dramatic and making everyone uncomfortable." "She's expressing her feelings," I defended. "There's nothing wrong with that." "There is when it disrupts an entire dinner," Heather retorted. "This is exactly the kind of emotional outburst that happens when children don't have proper structure." Lily's hands trembled, causing the painting to shake slightly. I just wanted. In that moment, disaster struck. As Lily shifted her weight, the edge of her painting caught Heather's wine glass, which had been refilled several times throughout dinner. The glass toppled, sending a wave of deep red Bordeaux directly onto Heather's cream-colored designer dress. "My dress!" Heather shrieked, jumping to her feet as the red wine spread across the expensive fabric. "This is a $300 Diane von Furstenberg." Lily stumbled back, horrified. "I'm sorry, Aunt Heather. It was an accident." What happened next occurred so quickly that I barely had time to process it. Heather's hand shot out, connecting with Lily's cheek in a sharp, ringing slap that echoed through the suddenly silent dining room. The force of it sent Lily stumbling backward, her painting falling from her hands and clattering to the floor. The silence that followed was absolute. Lily stood frozen, her small hand rising to her reddening cheek, her eyes wide with shock and hurt. A perfect handprint was forming on her pale skin. I felt as though the air had been sucked from the room. My body temperature plummeted, then surged with a wave of heat so intense I thought I might combust. Time seemed to slow as I took in the scene, Heather standing with her hand still raised, breathing heavily, my parents' shocked expressions, James looking down at his plate, Ashley's smirk, Noah's wide, frightened eyes, and my daughter, my sweet, sensitive Lily, trembling with shock and humiliation. "Lily," I managed to whisper, finding my voice. A sob broke from her throat, and she turned and fled from the dining room. I heard her footsteps pounding up the stairs, followed by the slam of the bathroom door. The shock that had momentarily paralyzed me gave way to a rage so pure and powerful it felt like a physical force. I rose from my chair slowly, my hands flat on the table to steady myself. "You hit my child," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Heather seemed to realize what she'd done, her expression shifting from anger to defensive justification. "She ruined my dress." It was a reflex. I didn't mean to. "You hit my child," I repeated, louder this time. "Now, Natalie," my mother interjected nervously. I'm sure Heather didn't mean to react so strongly. "Lily did cause quite a mess. Are you seriously defending her?" I turned to my mother incredulously. She slapped a 10-year-old girl across the face. "Let's everyone calm down," my father said, using his authoritative voice that had silenced arguments throughout our childhood. "No one needs to overreact here." "Overreact?" I laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. "My daughter is upstairs crying because her aunt physically assaulted her over a dress, and I'm overreacting?" "That's not fair," Heather protested, dabbing at her dress with a napkin. "You know how much this dress means to me." "Lily should have been more careful with her painting." "It was an accident," James said quietly, surprising everyone by contradicting his wife. "The girl didn't mean to spill anything." Heather whirled on him. "Whose side are you on?" "I'm not on any side," he replied evenly. "But hitting a child is never appropriate." "I barely touched her," Heather insisted, though everyone at the table had heard the impact and seen Lily stagger backward. "Mom, Dad," I said, turning to my parents. "Are you really going to sit there and say nothing? Your granddaughter was just slapped across the face." My mother twisted her napkin in her hands. "Heather has always had a bit of a temper," she said weakly. "I'm sure she's sorry." "A bit of a temper?" I repeated. "Is that what we're calling physical abuse now?" "Abuse is a very strong word," my father said sternly. "Family disagreements happen." "This wasn't a disagreement," I said through gritted teeth. "This was an adult striking a child." Ashley, who had been watching the drama unfold with interest, chose this moment to speak up. "Lily is always so sensitive about everything." "Mom didn't hit her that hard." "Ashley," James warned, "that's not helpful." Noah remained silent, his eyes fixed on the table, shoulders hunched as if trying to make himself invisible, a posture I recognized all too well from my own childhood. "I need to check on my daughter," I said, pushing away from the table. "The daughter that none of you seem to care about." "That's not true," my mother protested weakly. "We love Lily." "You have a funny way of showing it," I replied, heading for the stairs. I found Lily in the upstairs bathroom, sitting on the closed toilet lid, her knees drawn up to her chest. Her cheek still bore the reddened imprint of Heather's hand, and her eyes were swollen from crying. My heart broke all over again at the sight of her. "Oh, baby," I said softly, kneeling in front of her. "I'm so sorry." "Why does Aunt Heather hate me?" she asked, her voice small and broken. "She doesn't hate you," I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced of that myself. "She lost her temper, which was completely wrong and not your fault." "Everyone was already mad about me showing my painting," she sniffled. "And then I spilled the wine. I ruined everything." No, sweetheart, you didn't ruin anything, I insisted, gently pushing her hair back from her tear-stained face. You have every right to be proud of your achievement and to want to share it. What happened was not your fault. Grandma and Grandpa seemed mad at me too. They're wrong, I said firmly. What happened downstairs was wrong, Lily. No one should ever hit you, no matter what you did or didn't do. Accidents happen, and adults are supposed to handle them calmly, not violently. She nodded slightly, wincing as the movement caused pain in her cheek. The sight of her discomfort rekindled my fury. But I worked to keep my voice gentle for her sake. How about we go home? I suggested. We don't have to stay here. But dinner isn't over, she said, ever the rule follower. Grandma always says it's rude to leave before dessert. Sometimes, I said carefully, it's more important to protect yourself than to follow rules that hurt you. No one gets to hurt my girl. Not even family. Especially not family. Lily looked at me with a mixture of surprise and something else, perhaps a dawning understanding that some situations warranted breaking the social contracts she'd been taught to honor. Can we take my painting with us? She asked quietly. Absolutely, I promised. And we'll hang it somewhere special at home where everyone who visits can see what an amazing artist you are. I helped her wash her face with cool water, which seemed to soothe both the redness on her cheek and some of her emotional distress. As we prepared to head back downstairs, I steeled myself for the confrontation that was sure to follow. This night had crossed a line from which there was no going back. When Lily and I returned to the dining room, a tense silence hung in the air. My parents, Heather, James, and the children sat awkwardly around the table, dessert untouched. The painting lay on the floor where it had fallen, the frame slightly bent from the impact. I guided Lily to retrieve it, keeping my hand protectively on her shoulder. As we straightened, I made my decision. With deliberate movements, I pulled out Lily's chair and helped her sit down. Then I walked around to my own chair and pulled it back with enough force that it scraped loudly against the hardwood floor, causing everyone to flinch. We need to talk about what just happened, I said, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. Because I will not pretend this was normal or acceptable. Natalie, my mother began, her tone placating, perhaps this isn't the best time. When would be a better time to discuss someone hitting my child, Mom? I cut her off. Tomorrow? Next month? Never, which is your preference? Heather sighed dramatically. I've already said I'm sorry. It was a reflex. Can we please move on and salvage what's left of this dinner? I stared at her incredulously. A reflex? Is that what you call slapping a child across the face? Because most people's reflexes don't involve violence against children. You're blowing this completely out of proportion, Heather insisted. Am I? I turned to face her fully. Let me be absolutely clear about something, Heather. You will never, ever touch my daughter again. Not a finger. Not a hair. Nothing. The intensity in my voice must have penetrated because Heather actually leaned back slightly in her chair. I mean it, I continued. I don't care about your dress. I don't care about the spilled wine. I don't care about anything except the fact that you put your hands on my child. Natalie, my father interjected. Your sister made a mistake. We all make mistakes. This isn't about one mistake, I said, turning to face him. This is about a pattern that's gone on my entire life, Heather's behavior being excused while I'm expected to just absorb it. And now that pattern is affecting my daughter, and I won't stand for it. I turned back to Heather. You've been belittling me since we were children. You've extended that treatment to Lily since she was born. The comments about her weight, her personality, her interests, they've never stopped. And now you've escalated to physical aggression. That's completely unfair, Heather protested. I've only ever tried to help you improve. Someone needs to tell you when you're making mistakes with Lily. Improving people isn't your job, I replied sharply. And what mistakes exactly? Letting her pursue her passions? Allowing her to express her feelings? Not forcing her to be a carbon copy of your perfect family image. I turned to my parents. And you too. You've enabled this dynamic our entire lives. Nothing I ever did was good enough, while Heather could do no wrong. Now you're doing the same thing to Lily, and I've had enough. My mother's eyes welled with tears. That's not true. We love you both equally. Love isn't just words, Mom. It's actions. And your actions have always spoken volumes about who matters more in this family. Now that's going too far. My father said sternly. Your mother and I have always supported both of you. Really? I challenged. When I was 12 and won the school science fair. You skipped the ceremony for Heather's debate tournament. When I graduated college with honors, you spent the entire celebration talking about Heather's new job. Tonight, you spent 20 minutes discussing Ashley's piano recital, but couldn't spare 2 minutes to acknowledge Lily's award. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, neither able to refute these specific examples. To my surprise, James cleared his throat. I think Natalie has a point. Heather whirled to face him. Excuse me. I said she has a point. James repeated, more firmly this time. The dynamic in this family is unbalanced. And hitting Lily was completely out of line, Heather. You know it was. I can't believe you're taking her side. Heather hissed. I'm not taking sides, James said evenly. I'm stating facts. And the fact is, you've been in therapy for anger management for the past 6 months. But you've been skipping sessions. A stunned silence fell over the table. This was news to everyone except, apparently, James. You've been in therapy? My mother asked, sounding genuinely surprised. Heather's face flushed. That's private, James. Not anymore, he replied. Not when your anger issues are affecting children. Dr. Mercer specifically warned you about your reactions to perceived slights. So this has happened before? I asked, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. James didn't answer directly. But his silence and the way he glanced at Noah spoke volumes. You hit your own children? My mother's voice was barely audible. I do not hit my children, Heather insisted, though her confidence seemed to waver. I have occasionally been firmer than necessary when they've misbehaved. She threw a book at Noah last month when he spilled milk on the carpet. Ashley said suddenly, her previous smugness replaced by something harder to read. And she grabbed my arm so hard it left marks when I got a B on my math test. Ashley, Heather gasped. How dare you lie like that? I'm not lying, Ashley replied, a slight tremor in her voice. You said no one would believe me if I told, but Dad saw the bruises. The dining room fell into shocked silence again. Noah continued staring at the table, but nodded almost imperceptibly, confirming his sister's account. My father looked stricken. Heather, is this true? Of course not, Heather said, but her voice lacked conviction. They're exaggerating normal parental discipline. Leaving bruises isn't normal discipline, James said quietly. Neither is throwing objects or slapping. That's why I insisted on the therapy, which you've been lying about attending. I looked at my sister, seeing her differently now. The perfect exterior she had maintained for so long was cracking, revealing something broken underneath. In a strange way, I felt a momentary flash of sympathy for her, followed immediately by concern for her children. Heather, my mother said softly, we had no idea things were so difficult for you. Nothing is difficult for me, Heather insisted, though tears had begun to form in her eyes. I have everything under control. Clearly you don't, I said. My anger tempered now with a complicated mix of emotions. And continuing to pretend everything is perfect isn't helping anyone, especially not your children. My father, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. I think perhaps we need to acknowledge that there are some serious issues here that have gone unaddressed for too long. He turned to look at me, then at Lily, who was listening to everything with wide eyes. And I think we owe both of you an apology. What happened tonight was wrong. And our response to it was inadequate. My mother nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. He's right. Lily, sweetheart, I'm so sorry we didn't celebrate your achievement properly. And I'm sorry we didn't protect you when you needed it. Lily looked surprised at being addressed directly. It's okay, Grandma, she said automatically, the people pleaser in her emerging even now. No, it's not okay, I said firmly. But thank you for acknowledging it, Mom. Heather sat rigid in her chair, her face a mask of conflicting emotions, anger, shame, defiance, and beneath it all, a hint of fear. James placed a hand on her arm, which she immediately shrugged off. I think, James said carefully, that we should probably leave. This has been illuminating in many ways. But I believe Heather needs some time to process everything. Running away as usual, Heather muttered, but there was no real force behind her words. Not running away, James corrected. Taking a necessary step back to reevaluate. He looked directly at me. Natalie, I'm truly sorry about what happened to Lily tonight. It was unacceptable, and there's no excuse for it. I nodded, appreciating his sincerity if nothing else. As they prepared to leave, Ashley and Noah both came around to where Lily sat. To my surprise, Ashley spoke first. Your painting is really good, she said, with none of her earlier condescension. I'm sorry about what happened. Noah nodded in agreement. I liked how you explained the techniques. Maybe you could show me how to paint sometime. Lily managed a small smile. I'd like that. Watching this interaction, I felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps the next generation might break the toxic patterns that had defined our family for so long. After Heather, James, and their children left, an unusual quiet settled over my parents' house. The evening had veered so far from the normal script of our family dinners that no one quite seemed to know how to proceed. My mother busied herself clearing dishes, refusing my offer of help with a distracted wave. My father sat heavily in his armchair in the living room, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Lily and I gathered our belongings, including her painting, which thankfully had suffered only minor damage to the frame. We should probably go too, I said quietly to my parents. It's been a long evening. Wait, my father said, his voice lacking its usual authority. Please, just wait a moment. I hesitated, then nodded for Lily to sit beside me on the couch. My mother abandoned her kitchen cleanup and joined my father, perching on the arm of his chair. I've been sitting here thinking, my father began slowly, about what you said at dinner. About the science fair, and your graduation, and other things I can't even remember now. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. You were right. We have treated you and Heather differently. I didn't see it, or maybe I didn't want to see it, but looking back, the pattern is undeniable. Thomas, my mother started, but he held up a hand. Let me finish, Barbara. This is important. He turned back to me. I've always been proud of Heather because she was like me, driven, conventional, easy to understand. But you, Natalie, you were more like my sister Claire, creative, sensitive, marching to your own drummer. I never understood Claire, and I realize now I never really tried to understand you either. This was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from my father, and I found myself momentarily speechless. When Claire died, he continued, his voice thick with emotion, I regretted all the times I dismissed her interests or criticized her choices. And tonight, watching Heather strike Lily, I saw myself, not physically, I never did that, but the dismissal, the constant correction, the favoritism. I saw what it does. What it's done. My mother wiped tears from her eyes. We love you, Natalie. We love Lily. We've just been blind to a lot of things. Why Aunt Claire? Lily asked unexpectedly. I never knew you had a sister. Grandpa. My father looked startled, then sad. Yes, I had a younger sister. She was an artist, like you. We drifted apart when she chose to pursue art instead of joining the family business. She died in a car accident 15 years ago. Before you were born. Was she good? At art, I mean, Lily asked. A small smile touched my father's lips. She was extraordinary. She saw the world differently than most people. Her paintings made you feel things you couldn't always explain. Like Lily's, I said softly. My father nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. Yes, very much like Lily's. I'd like to see her work sometime, Lily said. I have some of her pieces in storage, my father admitted. I could never bring myself to display them after she died. It hurt too much. But perhaps it's time to bring them out. The revelation about my Aunt Claire, someone who had rarely been mentioned in our family, helped me understand my father in a way I never had before. His favoritism toward Heather hadn't just been about preferring her personality, it had been about avoiding the pain associated with someone he'd failed to appreciate until it was too late. What about Heather? My mother asked, bringing us back to the immediate situation. Should we call her? Make sure she's all right? I think James has it handled for tonight, I said. But tomorrow? Yes, someone should check on her. And on Ashley and Noah. Do you think she really? My mother couldn't finish the sentence. Hurts them? I supplied. I don't know. But James and Ashley seem to be telling the truth about some concerning behavior. Heather needs help, not more enabling. My father nodded gravely. We've been making excuses for her temper since she was a child. I thought we were protecting her, but maybe we were just allowing the problem to grow. It's not too late, I said, surprising myself with the words. Despite everything, Heather was still my sister and part of me. A part buried under years of hurt and resentment, still cared about her. She can get help. Make changes. But only if everyone stops pretending everything is perfect. Nothing about our family has ever been perfect, my mother said with a sad smile. We've just been very good at maintaining the illusion. Lily, who had been listening intently to this adult conversation, spoke up again. Is Aunt Heather going to be mad at me forever now? No. Sweetheart, I assured her, though I wasn't entirely confident. Aunt Heather isn't really mad at you. She's dealing with her own problems that have nothing to do with you. But I did spill wine on her dress, Lily pointed out, ever conscientious. Accidents happen, my father said firmly. No accident ever justifies hitting a child. Ever. And I should have said that immediately when it happened. I'm sorry I didn't, Lily. Lily seemed to consider this, then nodded. It's okay, Grandpa. Everyone makes mistakes. Out of the mouth of babes, I thought, watching my father's face as he registered the simple wisdom in her words. Yes, they do, he agreed. The important thing is learning from them. And apologizing, Lily added. That's what you always say, Mom. That's right, I smiled at her. Apologizing and then making different choices next time. As we prepared to leave again, my father asked to see Lily's painting one more time. She held it up for him, and he studied it with new eyes. It really is remarkable, he said. The way you've captured the storm. But also that small piece of hope, it shows wisdom beyond your years. Thanks, Grandpa, Lily beamed, the validation clearly meaning a great deal to her. Perhaps. My mother suggested tentatively, we could have a special dinner next week, just to celebrate Lily's achievement. We could invite some of your friends, Lily. And you could tell us all about the competition. The offer was so unexpected that both Lily and I were momentarily speechless. That would be nice, Lily finally said. Could I bring some of my other paintings too? I'd like that very much, my father said. I think it's time I learned more about art. As we drove home that night, the car was quiet. Both of us processing the evening's events in our own way. Finally, Lily spoke. Mom? I'm proud of you for standing up to Aunt Heather. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror, surprised. Thank you, sweetheart. I'm sorry it took me so long to do it. Better late than never, she said, repeating another one of my frequent phrases. That's what you always tell me when I'm afraid to try something. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest despite the emotional exhaustion of the evening. You're right. Better late than never. The incident at dinner had been painful, even traumatic, but it had broken open secrets and patterns that had been festering for decades. For the first time, I felt like real change might be possible, not just for Lily and me, but perhaps for our entire family. 1 month later, Lily and I hosted a gathering at our apartment. I'd spent the week preparing, cleaning our modest space until it shone, and working with Lily to transform our small dining area into something special. We'd covered the table with a new cloth, arranged fresh flowers in the center, and Lily had created place cards with personalized sketches for each guest. It wasn't our usual routine, in fact. We'd never hosted a family dinner before, but after the events of last month, many things had changed. The doorbell rang at exactly 5 o'clock. Lily, dressed in a new purple dress she'd selected herself, raced to answer it. Grandpa, Grandma, she exclaimed as she opened the door to reveal my parents, standing somewhat awkwardly in the hallway. My father carried a large, flat package wrapped in brown paper. Hello, sweetheart, my mother said, bending to hug Lily. Thank you for inviting us to your home. Mom, Dad, I greeted them, accepting their embraces with only a hint of the tension that had characterized our relationship for so long. Come in. Dinner's almost ready. My father handed the package to Lily. We brought something for you. Your grandmother's idea, actually. Lily carefully unwrapped the package, gasping when she revealed the contents, her Finding Hope painting. Professionally framed in a beautiful wooden frame that complemented the colors in her watercolor perfectly. We had it properly mounted and framed, my mother explained. The framer said it was museum-quality work. He was quite impressed when we told him a 10-year-old painted it. Thank you, Lily breathed, running her fingers along the frame. It's beautiful. We thought you might want to hang it somewhere special, my father said. I know just the place, Lily declared, leading them to the living room wall where we'd cleared a space specifically for this purpose. As my parents helped Lily decide on the exact placement for her painting, the doorbell rang again. This time, I answered it to find Heather standing alone, looking more subdued than I could ever remember seeing her. Hi, she said quietly. Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad you could come. I replied, meaning it despite the complicated emotions that still swirled between us. Heather had been through significant changes in the past month. After the dinner incident, James had insisted she return to therapy, not just anger management this time, but intensive psychological counseling. They were also in couples therapy, working through long-standing issues in their marriage. Most shocking to everyone, Heather had taken a leave of absence from her high-pressure corporate job, acknowledging that the stress had been contributing to her emotional volatility. Where are James and the kids? I asked, noticing she was alone. They'll be here in about half an hour. Heather explained. Ashley has her last piano lesson of the term, and James wanted to be there. I thought it might be good if I came a little early to talk. If that's okay. I nodded, leading her to the kitchen where I could keep an eye on the food while we spoke. I've been wanting to talk to you too, I admitted. Things ended so abruptly that night. Heather twisted her hands together, a nervous gesture I'd rarely seen from my usually confident sister. I've been doing a lot of talking in therapy. About my anger issues, about our childhood. About everything, really. How's that going? I asked, stirring the pasta sauce simmering on the stove. Hard, she admitted with a rueful smile. Really hard. But necessary. I've realized I have a lot of work to do on myself. That takes courage, I said, acknowledging you need to change. I'm sorry, Natalie, Heather said suddenly, her voice cracking slightly. For what happened with Lily. It was inexcusable. I've been trying to figure out how to properly apologize to her. She's in the living room with Mom and Dad, I said. I think she'd appreciate hearing that directly from you. But I should warn you, Lily processes things deeply. She might need time. Heather nodded. I understand. I'm prepared to be patient and earn back her trust. And yours. There was a sincerity in her voice I wasn't accustomed to hearing. The perfect facade she'd maintained for so long had cracked, revealing someone more human, more vulnerable, and perhaps, in time, more authentic. Before Heather could say more, the doorbell rang again. This time it was James, Ashley, and Noah, arriving earlier than expected. Lesson ended early, James explained as they entered. The instructor had a family emergency. Ashley, usually so poised and proper, seemed different today, more relaxed in jeans and a casual top rather than the formal outfits Heather typically dressed her in. Noah carried a small gift bag, which he shyly presented to Lily. It's for your art studio, he explained. Dad helped me pick it out. Lily opened the bag to find a set of professional-grade colored pencils. These are amazing. Thank you, Noah. As everyone settled in the living room, I noticed the dynamics between us all had shifted. My parents were more attentive to Lily, asking questions about her artwork and actually listening to her answers. Heather was quieter, observing more than dominating the conversation. James seemed more engaged with his children, less distracted by work concerns. And Ashley and Noah interacted with Lily as potential friends rather than rivals. Lily, why don't you show everyone your art studio? I suggested, knowing how proud she was of the space we'd created. Yes, please, my father said with genuine interest. I'd love to see it. Lily led everyone down the short hallway to what had once been our small spare room. Over the past month, we'd transformed it into a proper studio space for her, with good lighting, storage for her supplies, and walls displaying her previous works. It wasn't large or fancy, but it was functional and, most importantly, it was hers, a space that validated her passion and talent. "This is wonderful," my mother exclaimed, examining the organized supplies and in-progress works. "You've set this up so thoughtfully." "Mom helped a lot," Lily said, sending me a smile. "But I arranged all my supplies myself. I like having everything where I can see it for inspiration." "That makes sense," Heather commented. "Having the right environment is important for creative work." Lily looked at her aunt, perhaps surprised by the supportive comment. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. As we moved back to the dining room for dinner, the conversation flowed more naturally than I could ever remember at a family gathering. We talked about Lily's upcoming art classes, Noah's interest in science, and Ashley's decision to try drama club in addition to piano. Heather mentioned she was considering painting as a form of therapy, and my father surprised everyone by asking Lily if she would teach him some basic techniques. "I'd like to try my hand at it," he explained. "I never gave creative pursuits a fair chance before." "I could show you after dinner," Grandpa, Lily offered eagerly. "We could start with something simple." As I served dessert, a beautiful cake Lily had helped decorate, I realized that the family gathering I'd dreaded for so many years had transformed into something I could actually enjoy. The old dynamics hadn't disappeared entirely. There were still moments of tension, old habits that emerged briefly before being consciously corrected. But there was also something new. A willingness to acknowledge mistakes, to listen, to change. Later, as my father and Lily sat at her small art table, their heads bent together over a shared sketch pad, I found myself standing next to Heather in the kitchen. "I never thought I'd see Dad trying to paint," she commented, a hint of wonder in her voice. "People can surprise you," I replied, "if you give them the chance." Heather nodded thoughtfully. "I'm learning that about myself too. There are parts of me I've denied for so long, insecurities, fears, even some interests and desires that didn't fit the image I thought I needed to maintain." "It's never too late to discover who you really are," I said. "Or who you want to become." "That's what my therapist says too," Heather smiled slightly. "It's strange. I spent so many years thinking I had everything figured out. Feeling sorry for you because your life wasn't as perfect as mine. Now I realize my perfect life was making me miserable, and your authenticity was something to admire, not pity." The admission clearly cost her something, but there was relief in her expression too, the relief that comes with finally speaking truth after years of pretense. "We've all got our struggles," I said simply. "Maybe we'd have an easier time with them if we stopped pretending otherwise." As the evening wound down and our guests prepared to leave, there was a moment when Lily and Heather found themselves alone together near the door. I watched from a distance as Heather knelt down to my daughter's eye level. "Lily," she said softly, "I want to apologize properly for what happened at the dinner last month. There is no excuse for my behavior. I was wrong to hit you, and I'm truly sorry." Lily regarded her aunt seriously. "Mom says everyone makes mistakes, but we have to learn from them." "Your mom is very wise," Heather smiled sadly. "I'm trying to learn from my mistakes now. It might take me some time to get better, but I'm working on it." Lily considered this, then said, "I accept your apology, Aunt Heather. And I hope your therapy helps. Noah told me it's helping him feel safer at home." Heather's eyes glistened with tears at this simple, honest statement. "Thank you, Lily. That means a lot to me." As our family said their goodbyes, there was none of the usual relief I typically felt when a family obligation ended. Instead, I felt something unfamiliar: hope. Hope that the painful confrontation at last month's dinner had been a necessary rupture, allowing something healthier to begin growing in its place. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, I sat in our living room looking at her framed painting on the wall. Finding hope seemed particularly appropriate now, the small patch of blue sky breaking through the storm clouds a perfect metaphor for our family's journey. Protecting your child sometimes requires finding courage you never knew you had. That night at the dinner table, when Heather slapped Lily, something fundamental had shifted in me. The patterns of acquiescence and peacekeeping that had defined my life had broken, replaced by the fierce certainty that my daughter deserved better, and so did I. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. Heather's recovery would take time. My parents' new understanding would require reinforcement. The old family dynamics would try to reassert themselves. But for the first time, I believed real change was possible. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I paused at Lily's door, listening to her steady breathing. In standing up for her, I had finally stood up for myself too. Some storms, it seemed, were necessary to clear the air and reveal the hope that had been waiting there all along.